I'm Jim Check. With me, Ian Burns. We are with the really big show. Hear an echo there? No echo? Echo, echo, echo. It's all good, they say. It is February 18th. It's a Wednesday, and we do have a really big show. Please like, share, subscribe, get this out to as many people as possible. We would appreciate that. Here's the headlines as we start off here. Does democracy have any meaning in Canada anymore? Canadians expected to make sacrifices while elites continue to cash in. Military promises versus the actual reality. And the NDP has lost touch with reality. What really matters? Food prices and... what are the Liberals actually doing to bring down costs? Globalism versus nationalism. Election won on nationalism, led on globalism. Fear drives decisions, drives government bloat, and delivers votes. That's almost rhymey, eh? That was pretty good, eh? 4 years later, and no one answers to it. Guess what that is? What's a Canadian to do? Well, get a job with the government or leave. Pot store licenses get yanked. The Chinese auto dream may well be a nightmare. The world, according to Doug. I think it revolves around Doug. Universities in Canada gorge on tax dollars and schemes. Polls say Quebecers would vote to stay. No wonder Susan Holt wants to silence X. BC NDP raid the tax cupboard for scraps as they've run out of ideas. Lots of feedback on that one. And Alberta swings above its weight. Cuba is a have-not and have society of corruption. Things about to get hot in Iran. Unrealized gains or unrealized credentials. Crazy world, that's what it is. And we got lots going on. Thank you to everybody that comes here on a regular basis, and thank you to all the new people. Lots of the people we notice come here and watch, but aren't subscribers, so we would ask you to hit the subscribe button so that we can get this out to a much larger audience. The more subscribers we have, the more it shows it to other people, and the more we can get truth out there to the Canadian public. We would appreciate it a lot. We're going to kick it off with unbelievable. Yet another floor crosser, this time out of Edmonton. This is Matt Jeaneroux. Is that how you pronounce his name? Matt Jeaneroux?
Jeaneroux, I would say.
Jeaneroux. Shut down his social media already. Like he shut that down.
Seems to have done that preemptively, because as soon as this was announced, I went straight to his Twitter, and it was
blocked.
No access.
Blocked. He wrote this letter, though, as he wrote his letter of canceling out the voters, the people that voiced their democracy. They voted. I mean, it's more and more. This has to be a record now, floor crossers. It has to be an absolute record. I've seen this many floor crossings. It also speaks to, I guess, Pierre Poilievre had his leadership convention there, and he had a resounding approval. Yet, obviously, there's some leaks in there as well. So, obviously, he's going to face more questions on yet another floor crossing, right? But, I mean, the thing after...
He was already on his way out. He'd already promised that he was going to leave in the spring. So, he's going to leave in a month or 2 months or something like that. That's what he said, resign from Parliament. But there were lots and lots of whispers that he was initially going to join the Liberals, and then he changed his mind on that for some reason. But this is not the biggest surprise in the world. This is like... the guy that, if we're in the Cold War, the guy that's been visiting the Soviet embassy every day for the last year or something has defected to the Soviets. It's like, yep, we kind of saw it coming, but it's a little bit strange that there was all this fuss about it, and he said he wasn't going to do it. And he said, no, I'm just going to resign for family reasons or something along those lines, didn't he? And sure enough, like so many other Liberals, that was nonsense. And he's actually going to throw that away and stay in Parliament.
The piece said he's bolded in his letter here, after further reflection with my family, conversation with colleagues and constituents, I'll be continuing to serve in Parliament, but I'll be working for the Prime Minister. That's not what the electorate said. Electorate voted for you to be a conservative.
And this one is interesting because I'm sure everybody following the story has already been to look at the Edmonton Riverbend election in 2025, but he won 50.25% of the vote. So he won a majority, which makes it a lot more. Usually they win pluralities. I mean, it's not that often that you get a majority, get over 50% of the vote in a riding. So that means that, you know, more than half of the people that chose to vote in that election wanted the Conservative Party and Matt Genereux. Now they've just got Matt Genereux and the Liberal Party.
Just to let everybody know, Gavin Dew, MLA for Kelowna Mission, will be joining us at 9:45 to talk about the BC budget. We're going to talk a lot about the BC budget. Absolutely crazy budget. But this one here, Michael Ma, Matt Genereux, 27,000 votes for Michael Ma, and then Matt Genereux winning a majority. The electorate in Canada is just, you have to question, is democracy still a thing in Canada? The Liberal Party seems to just run all over it, just trample on democracy. Look at the Online News Act, and we talked about it yesterday, on some of the other things that go against the basic tenets of democracy. And this is just another example where the voter is canceled out because somebody went in a back room and made some promises. We don't know what the promises are either. Why? Why all of a sudden we're having so many floor crossings? And the Liberals denied that they, were trying to attract people, that they were coming to them, when, a few MPs have said, no, they're coming to us.
I mean, it is, let's acknowledge that this is quite remarkable, though. And this is a testament, I think, to how much people respect Mark Carney. Frankly, we have to admit it, at least in the members of the elite. They really respect Mark Carney. And he says in this little statement here, he refers to his Davos speech, which has impressed, the elite. We have to call them the elite, the people who are at the sort of top end of Canadian society. It's impressed them so much. They are so, they've been overawed by it, haven't they? To the extent that he's cited it in his, in this document here, where he's explaining that he's going to defect. But Mark Carney, we have to admit it, there is something very, very special about Mark Carney. Other people in the past couldn't do this. Even very famous leaders of the past in Canada haven't been able to do this. But he could do it. He's got there's something about him. There's some kind of charm or something that people just can't resist Mark Carney. And that's fascinating, number one. But it's also quite bad news, isn't it, for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party, because he just has this almost wizard-like ability to seduce people.
I would buy your argument a little bit better if they were more honest about how they were going about it. And, they denied that they were going after MPs, and then it turns out they were, so they're not being honest about it. And so what are they offering is the bigger question. What are they offering? And somebody with a little bit of common sense would ask themselves, that Davos speech was a globalist speech that really didn't talk about Canada, what's right for Canada, and how could somebody be attracted to a globalist speech as well? So those are the questions I would still have. What is attractive? What is attractive about that speech in Davos that speaks to reporting to a world global power as opposed to reporting to Canadians?
But also, I would just say a very intellectually lightweight speech as well. What does that say about our glorious rulers? That they were so bamboozled by this speech. They were so wrapped. They were just like, wow, geopolitics, man. That sort of doesn't speak well of the intellectual capacity of our elites in the media, in politics, anywhere. That they were all mesmerized by this mediocre, inconsistent, lightweight speech from Mark Carney. And yeah, I mean, there's the globalist element as well. And you have to bear in mind, this chap here, by the way, was a member of Danielle Smith's United Conservative Party as well. So you talk about the globalist element, or just the whole Carney's whole platform. How could you be in the UCP and then join Mark Carney's Liberal Party? And sort of all of a sudden you're in the bus sat next to Karina Gold and Melanie Joly and Stephen Guilbeault. Stephen Guilbeault is now his colleague. He'll be in the WhatsApp groups with Stephen Guilbeault. Stephen Guilbeault will be like, "Hey, Matt, welcome." Stephen Guilbeault. And he was in the UCP, this guy. How can you do that? You're talking about, you couldn't have a sharper split there between those two groups in mainstream Canadian politics. Stephen Guilbeault and the UCP, of which he was a member. Can't do that. I mean, it's that to me suggests that it's something to do with Mark Carney. The Saruman or Gandalf, depending on whether you like him or not. He's done it, hasn't he? He's got inside of his head and he's brought him over to his side somehow.
I think there's two other points I'd like to make before we move on. Is that one, if you looked at what happened in the past year, what's been accomplished, how could you be attracted to that? What's actually been accomplished in a year? You'd have to look at that and say, wow, I'm going to do this because it's going to come with some negativity. Obviously, if you show the next slide, he shuts down his social media because he knows he's going to face backlash, so he shuts it down. But also on the other side of that, he knows he's not going to get called out by the media because the media has welcomed the other floor crossers, the media that gets access. We've reached out to Matt Giroux here. We've reached out already, and we've asked for an interview. Do you think we're going to get one? Well, we've reached out anyway. We've reached out to see if he wants to answer to Canadians. Like, literally, this is what he's done. This is what he thinks of you as a Canadian. He shut his social media down. He does not want to answer to anybody. He only wants to answer to Mark Carney. The question is, what was promised to him? Why would he do it? Why would he do it? Because he knows what's coming. This is why he did this. But he knows that the media, CBC, CTV, aren't going to give him any gears like they should. Imagine if this was going the other way. Imagine the shitstorm that would be going on if a Liberal crossed over to a Conservative party.
It would be considered a grotesque violation of democratic principles, wouldn't it? And they would say, Mark Carney won the election, though he didn't. But that's how it would be. It would be put forward that he was given a mandate and he won the election, and now it's being undermined and subverted by these mysterious backroom deals. You just know it would. I mean, it's not difficult, is it, to imagine?
This tells you everything you need to know about Matt Giroux right here. He shuts it down. He doesn't want to hear from you. He does not want to hear from you. This is for everybody, right? I mean, this is not, you and I. This is like, we've talked to other people. This is shut down. He shut it down.
Very poor that he's not willing to actually defend it and stand there. And I always find that to be distasteful when people won't defend themselves on an intellectual level. Like, it's his responsibility. It's absolutely incumbent upon him to justify this and defend himself.
Well, Grandma here, Grandma G67
said this statement, which is feeble, frankly. I mean, there's nothing in there. That's not adequate.
I mean, Grandma G67 has the point that I've been saying. What's the point of voting if it's just all decided in a back room? Whether or not Mark Carney is, Gandalf, as you say, or not, that's not
Saruman.
That's not Saruman. That's not what the public voted for. So what is the point?
But this is like one of the things about Mark Carney, where he said, I'm not a politician. I mean, he doesn't say that anymore because it's obviously false. He's actually a very good politician, isn't he? If we're going to talk about that. But he used to say he's not a politician. And I would say ethically anyway, I know that's funny to talk about politicians' ethics, but he doesn't seem to understand the rules of the game. He doesn't seem to understand democracy, frankly. And I know that sounds like quite a big claim to make, but he doesn't seem to get it. He doesn't seem to understand that the average person, particularly in this riding, they're going to see this and they are going to have that response that you just quoted from Grandma G67 there. Like, what is the point in voting? But Mark Carney doesn't see it like that. He just sees it as like, I'm very charming and I'm very persuasive, and this is how you get things done. And I've done this all my life at big banks and Goldman Sachs, and the Bank of Canada and all the rest of it. I've always done this. I've always been great at like hobnobbing and persuading people behind the scenes. And I'm doing it now because I'm really good at it. Like, here we go, majority. I don't think he recognizes that is going to be a tainted majority. And it's going to be, well, at least in some circles, it's not going to be, the media aren't going to do any of that work. But the people, the peasants looking into the castle at the party are going to be saying, that's not fair.
Well, one of the basic tenets of democracy is transparency and accountability. And our job as media is to hold them accountable. He doesn't even want to hear from the public. He shut his account down. Doesn't want to hear from the public. The CBC and CTV act as shields for the Liberals, so the Liberals won't take questions. I've interviewed a city councillor here yesterday, two-term councillor, and I told him about Liberal MP Stephen Fuhrer won't even respond to emails. He said, "Oh, that can't be true. That can't be true." We got the receipts. They refuse to be held accountable. They refuse to be held accountable.
He's not the only person to have that reaction. Quite a few people have had that reaction where they can't believe that it's true. When yesterday we interviewed an MP from another province, we interviewed an MP from quite far away from the Kelowna riding, and we've interviewed lots of MPs from all over Canada, but we can't get an interview with Kelowna's MP.
Somebody who I know personally as well. John Gotti, thank you for the contribution. We do thank you. Independent media, it has to be the year for independent media. We must break through. We must break through the shield of the Liberals have. We must break through. And you can help that by sharing, subscribe, put this on your Facebook. Get it out to as large an audience as you can. If you're watching and not subscribed, just hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. You just hit the button. And if you want to support independent media, you can hit the join button. You can become a member as a thinking Canadian. And if you want to do what John did, great. But we need to get this out to a lot more people. We need to wake people up. Here's Mark Carney's response, though. He's honored to welcome Matt Jeanroux to caucus as a member of Canada's new government. Okay. And then obviously Pierre Poilievre had a reaction. And he, his reaction is that Matt betrayed the people of Edmonton Riverbend. I used to deliver newspapers in Edmonton Riverbend, fancy little area, lots of big houses. I was district manager for the Edmonton Journal as when I was going to college. That meant I delivered the papers when the paper boys didn't show up, or there were no kids. It was all adults. Almost everybody got the newspaper back then. But the long driveways in Riverbend, it wasn't like when you're in the more less affluent neighborhoods where you could just hop from doorstep to doorstep. You had to go way down a driveway, way up a driveway, way down a driveway, way up a driveway. Yeah.
Fancy. Did you not just jump over a hedge? Or would that get you fired upon?
No. There was notes on everything in your trip sheet there. It said, "Do not walk on their grass." And if you did, I also took all the complaints. So you go back. If there was footprints on the grass, they would call you back and complain and show you the footprints on the grass. I'm not even kidding you.
Wow.
And berate you for 25 minutes about how there's footprints on their lawn from the paper delivery.
But I mean, it being a prosperous area, you'd think that's very much Liberal territory, isn't it, these days? Which makes it all the more interesting that they voted for the Conservative candidate, doesn't it? I mean, that just goes to show that they resisted any temptation to express themselves with class solidarity by voting for the rich person's party, the Liberal Party. And I say that based on polling information there, surveys. But that's interesting, isn't it? They really did back him. But I just want to see highlight what Poilievre said here, where he said Matt Jeanroux has betrayed the people of Edmonton Riverbend who voted for affordable homes, affordable food and homes, safe streets, and a strong resource sector. Often the argument from people when there's a defection, the argument is our good old friend, the Westminster system. You don't elect the party, you elect the individual. That's usually the argument. The counter argument is, no, you don't. Like, very rarely do you elect the individual. A lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people even in this chat now who voted in the election not very long ago, in April, then they won't be able to remember who all the candidates were and what parties they were in. You just don't know that. It's not about the individuals. It really is about the party. But I would also say, given how tight the messaging was from the Conservative Party in that election, Matt Genereux will certainly have repeated all of the Polyev, Tory slogans and all the rest of it, all those points. So he will have voiced those issues and then been elected as a consequence. So even on an individual level, even if you take party out of it, this is a really extraordinary betrayal. And I'm sure that, you know, if he's in that riding again, if they don't give him another riding and they make him run in that one again, you would expect that he's going to be punished for this.
I just want to say one thing about the Westminster system, and it was the base. It's an English system. It comes from England, and it's also the basis of the American system. But they took it and refined it, and I believe they made some adjustments to it. That, you know, you're always a big fan of Thomas Jefferson, and they gave some things to the Americans that most people in the world envy. And the number one thing is the absolution of freedom of speech, and that one is, you know, like they gave them, you know, the Bill of Rights. And it is something that, you know, like, and even their system has way more checks and balances than the Canadian system or the Westminster system. Way more checks and balances.
The system has checks and balances. Our system doesn't.
Yeah. So, I mean,
that's an American.
You know, a lot of people think that we have a freer democracy here in Canada than the United States. We do not. They have a way more checks and balances in their system, and way more efficient system than we do here in Canada. Like, basically, you've said it before, Mark Carney is basically the king. They can change laws. They can change laws.
Yeah, Parliament, that's what, you know, that's what the Civil War was about, the English Civil War. The one that's actually important, not the American Civil War, which is not even slightly important for Canadians. It's a completely irrelevant thing. And yet when you say Civil War, people think of the bloody American Civil War, don't they? But, you know, the Civil War with Oliver Cromwell, which extended for quite a long period in the 17th century and then finally really concluded with the Glorious Revolution. And that was effectively the creation of the constitutional monarchy. And that gave Parliament the powers of the king. That's, you know, in rough form. And then it evolved in the coming centuries. It evolved into, the Prime Minister, or the person that leads Parliament, in effect, is like a king, temporarily. A king that you can get rid of quite easily, but still a king.
Tell us where you're watching from this morning. And we had gas here when I drove in this morning at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was $1.09. I couldn't believe it. $1.09 here in Kelowna. And wild. So tell us where you're watching from. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, most of all. Hit the share button. Get this out to more people. It would be very much appreciated. We're going to get on to some other stories here, but we're going to try and get an interview with Matt Genereux, and obviously somebody from the Conservative Party as well. I mean, this is unbelievable. But, you know, the amount of fear that they dish out, you know, this is another thing they get to use as cover, right? Unprecedented times, the fear. It's like fear porn that they dish out. It comes from the CBC, just basically all the time. Fear porn, fear porn, fear porn. And it just drives some people to do things they would never even consider doing in the past. Let's talk about the military. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. Canadians will be expected to make sacrifices to build up national defense. That's from Carney. Carney reiterated his pledge that he reneged on last year. Remember, he said he was going to get it 2%, never did. That's what I mean. What could you look to Matt Genereux to say, wow, I want to join that. I want to be part of that. Just like, none of these goals will come easy. All require ambition, collaboration, and occasional sacrifice. Where are the elites making sacrifice? Where's the government employees making sacrifice? We saw yesterday, and we're going to talk about the 4th anniversary of the horses trampling on Canadians' rights. Nobody's answered to it. And that lady that wrote that memo, Jeanette Charest, I think it is. Charette. She just got awarded a new job. And she got like $400,000. Well, what are Canadians getting? 7.3% grocery inflation. He says we're now on track to make that 2% target this spring, a decade ahead of the previous schedule. I mean, they're just playing with numbers. We committed to double our defense expenditures by the end of this decade, amounting to an additional $80 billion. Nobody knows where the money is going to come from. To what extent do you think the public support for the defense experts are saying would be the largest increase in defense spending since the Second World War? That was from a reporter. And he said, we absolutely can establish the public support for that. I mean, it would be one thing to say it, another thing to do it. Carney first promised to achieve a 2% NATO target by June 9th. He claimed at that time we met in 2025. Not done. Canada will achieve NATO's 2% target this year, half a decade ahead of schedule, Carney said at that time. Not done. Target not met by December 31st. Not done. And we did this story yesterday. Military is underfunded, under-equipped, undermanned, underpaid. And they tried to get, like the federal employees to join the military so they could up their numbers. And they said, it lasted one day. They said, hell no, we won't do it. But they don't even have air equipment, boats. They spent $300 million last year hiring transport contractors due to inadequate vehicle fleet. 203 separate contracts were approved. You know, when they have to go do Arctic operations or something, they're just like, can we hitch a ride? Is there any chance anybody else is going up there? Who do they phone? They phone the Americans and ask for a ride or what? What?
Uber.
We did the story a while back. The auditor went to 14 military housing facilities. 7 of them were unfit for living. They had toilets didn't work, unsafe drinking water, and deteriorating walls. And you're actually basically paying these people almost minimum wage, just under $45,000 a year, a private. And you're asking them to kill strangers or be killed by strangers. Meanwhile, bureaucrats, we're going to show you later, on average make $143,000 a year. And they don't even go to work 5 days a week. And they're crying about it when you're telling them they have to. These are all facts. Not making it up. And this is a National Post, an opinion piece there. Canada's defense strategy is to bloat the bureaucracy. That is one thing they're really good at. We have bloated the bureaucracy both provincially and federally. Just unbelievable bloating of the bureaucracy. It seems like the bureaucrats, remember, what was the name of the former the former defense minister that has now got a contract up in the Arctic there? What was his name again? We did that story just recently.
Begins with S, doesn't it? Sajid something?
Yeah, Sajid, yeah. And
he's a very forgettable person. Harjit Sajjan, that's his name.
And he got a contract outside of the cooling off period as well. But hey, what are rules for anyway? What are rules for? Here's Pierre Poilievre on the Carney's new CAF armament strategy. Let's listen in.
New promises regarding military equipment. Now, let me say we should all agree that Canada needs to become militarily independent, and that includes not just having a strong armed forces, but the ability to supply that armed forces with the best technology and equipment that exists in the world, and to do it with our own supply chains. We've become overly reliant on the Americans and on other countries because we do not have the capacities at home. We want to return them here. The reason we can't get things built for our military is the same reason we can't get homes built or resources developed. Too much bureaucracy. It often takes.
So the audio on that just really bad, or?
Yeah, it was something to do with the microphone that they had. But he made a really good point. It's a shame that we can't get it from the horse's mouth, but I'll try and sort of sum it up as fairly as possible. But he was talking about how foolish it is to have these really long procurement processes with loads of bureaucrats involved and loads of checks and like as with everything in Canada that involves the government, it just takes 1,000,000 years to get it done, and you have to ask like thousands of stakeholders their opinion and all that. He highlighted that and he said, we can't fight like that now. because that's not how wars work anymore. And he pointed to Ukraine. And this is not, this is really not just him saying this. Many, many war observers are saying this. In Ukraine, technology goes out of date in months, weeks sometimes, with because it's primarily drone technology. It's primarily a sort of a drone war right now. And he pointed out that we can't do these like ridiculously long, like decades long procurement processes, competitions or whatever you want to call it, with all of the bureaucratic input if we're actually serious about having a fighting force. Because by the time we actually have the item, whatever it is, the equipment in our hands, it'll be decades out of date. And this is why people say, and we've said this, like the Ukrainian army, we sort of like, we might be inclined to look at them as almost like beggars or something, and like a bit hopeless, the Ukrainian army. The Ukrainian military would destroy and conquer Canada probably in like 6 days or something like that. It's one of the most powerful fighting forces in the world, like top 5. It's vastly more powerful than Canada, like unimaginably more powerful than Canada. The Ukrainian military could probably fight 10 Canadas and still win. So, we need to sort of learn the lessons from what's going on in Ukraine and do some of what they're doing. And he's the first person outside of like Foreign Policy magazine and these obscure sort of geopolitical figures that I follow. He's the first person to actually say that. Like certainly in mainstream Canadian media or politics. So, and I think that's a much bigger deal than like the part that's sort of like trying to score points on a lot of other things that he's doing here. That's a really important point, and I get the impression that nobody's listening.
Thank you to Center 88. Sausage roll o'clock somewhere in the world. Thank you for the sausage rolls. Again.
Sausage roll o'clock's every minute of the day, like every hour of the day is sausage roll o'clock.
Just reminding everybody, at 9:45, Gavin Dew is going to jump in here, and then we're going to jump into the BC section of the budget, and then we'll come back to our regular load where Gavin Dew joins us. But the BC budget came down, and we did want to get some reaction. We've also asked David Eby, the Premier, for an interview. We're just going to reach out, and we're going to keep a scorecard, too, of who believes in democracy and who does not. Here's Avi Lewis. He's running for the NDP leadership. They are completely out of touch. They are just completely... I don't believe we need to spend 2% of our GDP on military spending. We need to spend it on other things, including climate emergency. Still there on that. And so who do we rely on for our... these are the same people that will stick sticks in the eyes of the Americans. What should we do for our protecting our nation? What should we do, Avi?
Well, the aforementioned Ukraine. That is probably the answer, isn't it? Just give Ukraine stuff. Give Ukraine carbon capture devices.
Will fight. They will. Make sure that they're using electric tanks and stuff like that. That's the...
This guy, though, he's the favorite.
Well, I know.
At the minute. He's got the most money as well, which is all important in politics, as we know. And also, he's got an amazing NDP pedigree. I think like both his dad and his granddad were leaders of NDP, parties, provincial or federal. Yeah.
And guess what? He was also a former CBC journalist. Imagine that.
I mean, that means that he's morally good. That's like he was in the priesthood.
He's better than us, that's for sure.
He knows right from wrong. I mean, look at this. Obviously, he knows right from wrong. Let's not have a military. Let's buy carbon capture machines instead. Although he probably doesn't like carbon capture, does he? Because that allows you to still pump oil. So it's probably considered naughty. But I would say, for all it is funny to laugh at the NDP, and that seems to be all we do now, it's all Canadians do, is just laugh at the NDP. But there'll be at least one group of people in Canada that are not laughing about this, and that's Conservatives. The Conservative Party are not going to be laughing about this. Because if somebody like this, who is, and I say this in a very neutral way, I'm not trying to, this is not an insult, but an extremist, if an extremist like this leads the federal NDP, they're gonna lose even more MPs. They're gonna drop off the face of the earth. They're gonna be a very small and insignificant party, and that means more votes for the Liberal Party, which is what happened in the last election. So the Conservatives will, like the smart Conservatives anyway, the strategists behind the scenes, they'll be looking at things like this and they'll just have their head in their hands. This is a disaster for the Conservative Party.
He's also the poster boy for what's wrong with media in Canada, for the CBC and CTV. They've become activists. They are not journalists anymore. They've become activists, and they're all at the begging bowl for. They've been corrupted by money, and they've been corrupted by sausage rolls and not journalism. They won't provide the both sides of the story. They just won't do it. And this thing here is just basically, if a war came, in these dangerous times, that according to Mark Carney, the world's never been as dangerous as now. What are we going to throw at them? Climate capture devices? Or are we going to just say, don't attack us. We're the good guys. We're saving the world.
But this is the same chap that wants to sort of completely get off fossil fuels as well, and is not a fan of, because he lives in BC, doesn't he? I'm pretty sure. He's got some sort, I think he does live in BC, doesn't he? I'm reasonably confident about it. But he's been very down on LNG as well in BC, and he thinks that that's a stupid idea, very, very wrong. So the thing is, he's talking about it, we shouldn't spend 2% or 5% of our GDP on defense. If he was in charge, we couldn't even do that anyway, because we wouldn't be able to make anything. We wouldn't be able to run, blast furnaces. We wouldn't be able to do anything. We wouldn't be able to be honest. And I've mentioned this many times, people like him don't seem to understand this, so it's a waste of time. But we also wouldn't be able to produce our own fertilizer, because that requires natural gas as feedstock, and usually to power the process as well. So we wouldn't have fertilizer, which would mean dramatically smaller yields. So we'd have even more trouble feeding ourselves than we already do. Imagine grocery prices then. If yields in Canada, crop yields in Canada drop like 50%, let's say. How much do you think it would cost to buy a bag of potatoes then?
Here's a Fox interview with a former climate alarmist, now calling the movement a scam. Let's listen in.
Rooted in lies, all of them. Our next guest was once a climate alarmist, but now says the entire movement is, quote, a scam. Tom Harris is the executive director of the International Climate Science Coalition. He joins me now. Tom, good to see you tonight. Now, you actually say the only way to get rid of this is to go after the science of climate change. Explain.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people will say, well, Canada, for example, puts out so little greenhouse gas emissions that we shouldn't actually try to reduce it because China is double the United States. Well, the trouble is people argue that, well, yes, but we have to set an example to the world and we have to be good citizens and all that sort of thing. So they're using these arguments quite often that China's doubled the emissions of the U.S., et cetera. But the real underlying thing is that there is no climate crisis. I was originally an aerospace engineer, and I would give speeches and I wrote articles. I wrote one in the Ottawa Citizen about comparative planetology, how studying the planets helps us understand the Earth better. And I used the example of the runaway greenhouse effect on Venus. I said, this could happen on the Earth if we don't reduce carbon dioxide.
Good.
Well, a local professor...
We've seen that piece before on Venus and that. But
yeah.
These people wouldn't get airtime before, like 2 years ago. Nobody that came out against climate activism or alarmism or religion would even get airtime. And anybody that said anything, including us, would be called climate denialists and all kinds of different things. There's enough people coming out now, including Bill Gates, and even poster girl and poster boy, Greta Thunberg now has moved on. She's more of a, activist for other ventures that can raise more money.
How many times have we seen this happen though, where they suck everything they can get out of a movement, and when they realize, because there is like a revolutionary mindset, isn't there? There's a class of people who you might as well just call revolutionaries in any era, any period of history. They suck all the life out of it. They get everything they can possibly get out of it. And then once they realize that it's done, they just move on to something else. You see this all the time. And the Israel thing, the climate change to Israel-Gaza, that pirouette, that little maneuver that so many of these revolutionary people pulled off, I think that was like, that. I don't think it's ever been clearer in history that what I said there is true, that there is just a set of people who simply want a revolution. They don't care what the vehicle is. They don't care how it's brought about. They just want a revolution. And the fact that so many of them have jumped away from climate change sort of tells you what way the wind is blowing. But I would say climate change has a remarkable sort of staying power, and it can come back, and I think it will come back. And it'll come back when there's a massive hurricane or something, or a tsunami, or gigantic fire that destroys like a famous part of a famous city or something like that. When that happens, it'll be back, and Greta will be back on it, and the revolutionary class they'll all drop their keffiers or whatever it is at that point, whatever the revolution is. Then they'll drop that and they'll go straight back to this, and we'll be back having this conversation.
Well, Mark Carney has bet his fortune and Brookfield's fortune on climate change and financialization of it. And I watched the piece on an economist there, and it's really important for Canada. And I'm going to reach out and see if I can get him on the show as well. Maybe we'll do it as a separate show because I think it's going to be a longer piece. Canada's prosperity has been sacrificed at the altar of climate religion, for sure. We wouldn't be in this place if we didn't, like Ian said a while ago, we did that headline. A comet must have hit Canada, and just Canada. Well, the UK and that too, must have hit these countries. And then for Canada, around 2015, a comet hit Canada. Because, I mean, so many things look completely different. Like, it's just like we went on a different trajectory in 2015. You figure out what happened in 2015.
Yeah, to be fair, like on the face of it, it seemed like that was also happening in the United States, but under the bonnet, it wasn't happening. Because with Obama, the Americans were busily fortifying Fortress America and building out their shale oil and shale gas. Like they were dependent. They were doing the real stuff. Whilst almost it seemed like America was the most troubled country in the world, didn't it, for quite a while? But when you actually look inside what they were doing, and that includes Obama and Trump, for all the dysfunction on the face of it, they were doing the serious work, and now they sit there as easily and by a massive distance the richest country in the world and the most powerful country in the world. We
are working on Polyev as well. Jason, one of our Thinking Canadian members, has asked that we get him on. We have been working on that for a while. We did get Michael. we did get Michael Cooper yesterday, and he said he'll come back. We're going to get him back on as well. So we're going to do a lot more. Again, if you can get this show out to more people, the more audience it has, the more weight it has when we reach out, and they can't ignore it. We even want to get Doug Ford on, Flip Flop Ford. I mean, the world centers around him, so we do want to get him on the show as well. And I don't want to move on to the next topic, but Gavin Dew is supposed to call in. So why don't we kick it off into the BC section, and hopefully he jumps in just as we're getting into the BC section. I'm going to go way down there on the BC section here. If you can follow along there. Desert Fox.
It's a good photograph, isn't it, of Brenda Bailey? She looks very serious there. So does David Eby, actually.
Like, David Eby looks glum as usual. I mean, just a second here. I'm trying to find it myself here. But I mean, that's the slide. Put that one back up there. The budget they delivered, it's just like they're raiding the cupboard. They're literally raiding the tax cupboard. And the cupboards are bare. They're basically looking for scraps. That's what I look at it as, as a CPA. Look at what they produce here. They have this massive deficit going on. And now, I think the deficit now, the interest costs on that are the fourth, it's as big as the fourth largest ministry they have, the interest on the deficit. And it's continuing to expand. And then 2 weeks ago, Brenda Bailey said that she was going to deliver a budget that nobody's going to like her for. And you thought, well, cuts are going to come. They're finally going to do the right thing and make cuts. No cuts. No cuts of significance. What they did do.
Don't worry, I read CBC's article about the BC budget, like an analysis piece, and they said that it was all about balance, and they have to balance the demands of. And then there's a list of these maniacs that just want to spend infinity money on infinity causes and don't understand finance, don't even care. Those people are demanding loads of money, and then on the other hand, you've got some people that are demanding that you actually balance the budget and don't spend more than you can generate in revenue. And these two poles, the CBC tells us, that you have these two poles, these two groups pressuring the BC NDP. The BC NDP is somewhere in the middle. So that's one way to frame a narrative, isn't it? I mean, if anybody, we talked about Chomsky when I was talking about Chomsky yesterday, Noam Chomsky. I mean, this is his manufacturing consent, and this is his analysis of the media, how you get these, you put these two fake opposing forces and say, I'm in the middle, even though you've arbitrarily selected the groups that you're in the middle of. So you're not in the middle of anything other than your own imagination. But the CBC tells us anyway that BC NDP is right in the middle, nice and balanced.
It's like they've run out of ideas. Like, instead of raising revenues, they've raided what's left of the cupboard. They've looked in the cupboard, and there's not much left there to tax. I mean, they've basically looked in there, and they've done little things that are just basically just unbelievable. Like the provincial sales tax, which is a 7% tax, they've expanded that to certain professional services, which is a burden to businesses. So now they've added it to accounting and bookkeeping, which every business has to do. So accounting and bookkeeping, every business has to get accounting and bookkeeping. And PST, so they've added 7%. So if you use accounting and bookkeeping services, there'll be a 7% fee on that. So even if you're getting your tax return done, you're going to pay a 7% fee on that now. Businesses are going to pay 7%. So, you know, on a $10,000 accounting fee, which isn't that much for a business, that's another $700. And that's going to architectural, engineering and geoscience, rental property and strata management, and then commission on non-residential real estate transactions, security and private investigation services. So they're trying to do it so that they're trying to irritate as little as possible, I guess. So they're just like kind of looking around in the cupboard. Who can we piss off the least, right? You know what I mean? So how can we generate revenue without causing the most amount of pain, where people really push back? And also the PST exemptions for clothing patterns, basic cable, and landline services. And here's a tip for you. Get rid of basic cable. You don't need it anymore. Get rid of it. And landline. If you still got a landline, just yank it out of the wall right now. Call TELUS or whoever it is and tell them to take their phone and stuff it. How's that? And
well, it might finally push those people over the edge there. Just like, okay, I'm done now.
I just got a communication from Gavin. He's we're going to see if he's going to jump in here. We're going to keep going here. And this is Caroline Elliott. She's running for the BC Conservatives right now. She's running, and she's saying the EB's complete and utter fiscal disaster with, this is from Vaughn Palmer there in the Vancouver Sun, says that fiscal credibility shredded in page 1 of BC's budget. So Gavin's going to jump in 1 minute, he says. Another budget, another proof that David Eby is not a fiscal manager of John Horgan's ilk. And then here's Eleanor Sturko, we've interviewed before as well. Mismanagement. To me, it seems like they've run out of ideas. They've basically run out of ideas on how to get, because I mean, get mining companies going, get forestry going, get industry going, so that the royalties help pay for some of the stuff that you want to do. But uncertainty in British Columbia means less people want to invest in British Columbia. So the only thing you have left to do, because you can either, there we go. I think we have Gavin Dew just popping in here in 1 second here.
Just as he's coming in, I'm seeing that Harman Bangu has announced his intention to lead.
Check.
Hey, you're live.
Oh, hey, Jim.
Hey, hang on a second. You're live. You're actually live. So you're here with Ian and I. We're working on getting your image in here. Can you hear me, Gavin?
Yes, I can. Loud and clear. Sorry to be late, Jim.
Hey, no problem. Well, we're just working on the BC budget because we were anticipating you in here. The Desert Fox is working on getting your visuals going here. We're seeing if we can get your visual up, but we can start talking anyway. There we go. Look at that. We're gonna put you right center screen. Welcome to the Really Big Show. You've never been on the Really Big Show. As Ed Sullivan saying, we got a really big show today. And
it's a really big privilege.
Thanks for coming in anyway. BC budget. We started our headline on this was, it seems like the NDP are raiding a bear cupboard, looking for scraps and trying to generate revenue by taxing whatever they can find, by irritating as few people as possible, but still just taking a little piece off of everybody. And what do you make of the budget?
Well, Jim, I think you really nailed it there around raiding a bear cupboard. When you dig into the details of this budget, there's a more than $1 billion tax hit on working families, but there's also a lot of these just insane little irritating changes. So, for example, they just added PST to yarn. If you're a knitter, you're now going to be paying 7% more for the yarn that you purchased to knit a scarf for your kid or grandkid. If you go to get your shoes fixed or your clothes repaired, you're going to be paying more with this expansion of the PST base. But the bigger implication of what they've done with the PST change is it's going to bring in about $560 million a year more in year 3 of this fiscal plan. And that is in large measure because they're adding PST to a whole bunch of professional services. So think accounting, think bookkeeping, think architecture firms. But that accounting and bookkeeping line item means that every single small business in British Columbia, when they go to do their bookkeeping and do their taxes, they're going to be paying more. And at the same time, that change is also going to drive professional services businesses and companies to grow their operations everywhere except BC. So I guarantee you, we are going to lose accounting jobs over this. Jim, I know you're an accountant by training. Having people have the opportunity to graduate from accounting programs, get good jobs working in accounting firms, learning how to do all that analysis. Many of those people go on to work in companies. They become controllers, they become CFOs, they become entrepreneurs. This is going to drive professional services out of BC and kill good, well-paying, family-supporting jobs. And it is also a stealth tax on small business who will end up bearing the brunt of that change. There's all of these kinds of changes in terms of taxes. There's some significant changes in terms of capital projects. This is a really crappy budget, and it's getting panned pretty much universally.
I know you're the shadow minister for JEDI, Jobs, Economic Development, and Innovation. You're right. If you're a small business and your tax bill, your accounting services for the year $10,000, it's $700 just for that. And then if you have architectural, engineering, geoscience, and then the other one is just for rental property and strata management. Obviously, that gets passed down to people that are paying the rent. All the costs get passed down to the consumer at the end of the day.
That's exactly it, Jim. What I think this government fails to understand is that you really can't tax business. You tax end users of business. Those costs get passed on, because if they're not passed on, then eventually you just get margin compression to the point where you can't stay alive as a business. So this is going to hit a lot of small businesses. It's going to hit a lot of people. It's going to continue to drive up the cost of housing. When you add additional taxes to architects, that gets passed on to the end user, which is the owner of a home or the renter of a home. There's all of these knock-on effects of these changes that are being made. And what's really mind-boggling about this budget is the totally different directions it's pulling in. So, for example, they've made huge changes to the tax deferment program for seniors to be able to defer their property taxes. It's going to result in a 4% swing in the interest rate that is being accrued against deferred property taxes. That is a direct effort to push seniors out of their homes. To where? To long-term care. We're short 16,000 long-term care beds, and this government just hit the pause button on 6 long-term care facilities, including Cottonwoods. They actually took these projects that had specific end dates in previous budgets and threw them into a category of to be confirmed, which basically suggests they may or may not happen anytime in the near future because they're delaying their capital plans on a bunch of things, including a hospital replacement in Burnaby, as I say, 6 long-term care facilities. a bunch of other stuff. Like this budget shows a government that is completely off the rails.
Do you think that Brenda Bailey floated it out there? Because she said, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, where she floated it out there and said, this is going to be a budget that I'm not going to make any friends about. This is going to be like, she kind of like put it up, positioned it as an austerity budget. And come delivery, there was no austerity, no cuts, and it's all going to be through attrition and not rehiring and all that. Did they get a ton of calls from the unions and say, don't you dare? I mean, we've seen government bloat in British Columbia. Are they just that scared to make any serious cuts?
Yeah, I mean, Jim, the level of bloat in this government is just incredible. There's been more than a 40% expansion of the public sector workforce in BC in the life of this government, while private sector jobs have grown by single digits. It is completely reversed. Economists tell us you should be creating 5 private sector jobs for every 1 public sector job, and this government has actually been doing the reverse of that. So they have presided over huge growth. This is not a swollen public sector that they've inherited. They've literally been directly growing it over the last 8 years. And in fairness, there are some areas of growth where we needed more people in the healthcare sector and so forth, but that comprises a portion. There's been massive bloat, and we are now in a situation where AI and other tools are allowing massive administrative efficiencies to be brought to bear, and this government is terrified to talk about them. I had a question directly asked of Brenda Bailey at an economic summit a few weeks ago about how her government intended to make use of those efficiencies to shrink some of the bloat in the public sector. She completely dodged the question. They're going to have to reckon with some very difficult conversations, frankly, with some very closely held supporters and stakeholders of theirs in organized labor around how they actually can manage to restrain the further growth of this government and right-size it to a realistic extent without just relying on kind of this very nebulous language around attrition, which is just not going to get them to where they need to go. I think the other key point to make, Brenda Bailey at that same economic summit had a bit of a Freudian slip where she said on stage that she regularly had to remind her cabinet colleagues that you actually have to grow the economy before you can redistribute it. I don't think there's a fundamental understanding of the importance of economic growth in this government. And even when they pay lip service to economic growth, they don't understand it. They only want to pick winners and losers, not actually create fundamental conditions where small business can grow the economy.
Ian?
Yeah, I was quite interested by the estimate of $189 billion debt by the end of this window. They estimate that's going to be 37.4% debt to GDP ratio. I was doing some rough calculations there. It means that if interest rates are about sort of 5% or something like that, it could be almost $10 billion a year. That's a gigantic expense, alongside everything else that we're quite familiar with. Credit rating agencies, perhaps, they might have a negative opinion of all this. So I was just thinking, 2028, let's assume that you're in government then, that there's a BC Conservative government. What are you going to do? And it's not just what are you going to do, but I almost feel like, what can you do? You're going to be so handicapped by this. If this fiscal position remains steady, if it remains like this, I don't understand how you can implement any of your ideas. So I was just wondering what your plan is.
Yeah, Ian, that's a sad statement of where things are, but it's accurate. What's called the interest bite, or the cents on the dollar occupied by interest costs, will be going up to 8.2 cents on the dollar in the life of this budget and fiscal plan, from about 4-point-something cents. So massive increase in the share of spending that is going toward interest, and that's before the almost inevitable credit downgrades and the higher cost of borrowing because we're becoming a basket case. It's a tripling of debt under this government. So massive increase in debt, and not much to show for it is the problem, Ian, because they've been putting government operations on the credit card. So that's what's really scary. The bottom line is the only way we're going to get out of this even if there are significant cuts made to government services or the way that they are delivered, the only way we get out of this is going to have to be very significant economic growth. We are going to need to really unleash the economy, and we're going to need to convince people that British Columbia is investable again, whether that's in major projects that are tethered to the land base that are currently being destabilized by what's happening with DRIPA and Cowichan and all the other developments that are creating tremendous uncertainty and doubt around whether it makes sense to invest on the land base in this province, or whether it's figuring out how to convince people who could be anywhere, building tech companies, doing things of that nature. We need to convince these folks that they want to be in BC and be taxed in BC and create jobs in BC, because we are currently seeing a rapid attrition of that kind of talent and initiative and capital, both financial capital and creative capital. We're going to have a massive turnaround in terms of the economy and the economic vitality of this province if we are going to get on track. And that is going to require undoing significant damage done by this government and this premier.
I sense, though, that the word I didn't hear quite from you there. I didn't hear the word cut or cuts. And I sense that the election, I mean, I don't know if they plan this far ahead, but the BC NDP must be thinking, we can just paint them as the cutters. That is realistically, you're talking about changing taxes and things like that. That's going to cost money, obviously, isn't it? And if you've got no money, you've got no fiscal room, that means cuts.
Yeah.
Surely.
I mean, Ian, ultimately, tax cuts don't necessarily cost money if you make the right tax cuts and they lead to an expansion of the tax base. Right? If you raise taxes on a shrinking tax base. So, for example, professional services, as I mentioned, are now going to theoretically bring in, 500 million plus a year in additional taxes, unless and until we see an outmigration of professional services companies who hire up in Alberta and Ontario instead of in BC, and who ultimately end up remitting those taxes in other provinces. So raising taxes does not necessarily end up increasing your tax take, especially when the folks you're taxing are mobile milk cows who can, they can go elsewhere. The herd is not locked to you. So it is that tax piece. I do think, the reality is, for this government to pretend for a second that they're not the ones doing cuts, they just made heartless cuts to 5,000 families with kids with autism. If you look at this budget, this was an assault on working families and on seniors and on small business. And a lot of it is, frankly, it's cutting the availability of services. It's underinvesting in crucial areas. They re-announced a couple of mandatory care facilities, but did nothing to move forward with supports that we need in the Okanagan. We should be opening the Oliver Penitentiary for mandatory care in order to get people that desperately need care, the care that they need. We should be supporting our seniors, and this government is instead slow rolling and pulling back on support for seniors while literally taxing knitting yarn, taxing landlines, taxing basic cable, which are services that seniors disproportionately use. This government doesn't have a leg to stand on with any pretense that they are a government that is standing up for people and protecting services. This is a heartless budget. It's a directionless budget, and it is a budget that only continues to manage decline in our province. We're not getting back on track until we get rid of these guys.
And I think BC Business Association gave it a D, and said they've never given a D out before. I mean, there was nothing in there that they could step up to the podium and ask for applause for. It was a bad news budget all the way around, and to me, as an accountant, I would look at it and I would say, you're literally looking for scraps that you can tax. Just like you've run out of things that you can tax, and a lot of these things are going to chase people into other provinces, like you said, including raising that like the provincial tax in general, just raising that, and then
try to pretend they didn't, right? It was a hidden hike. Jim, I think, again, it's the feedback loop. So let me give you an example. You're a small business in downtown Kelowna, and you have been hammered by, David Eby's drug decriminalization experiment. You're dealing with all kinds of vandalism and all these issues. Guess what? If you go and hire private security because the police can't keep up with the chaos, you're now going to pay PSD on that too.
Yeah.
So the feedback loop, like when you start just running the rational feedback loops of what signals this is sending, it's like you get to pay more to file your taxes to pay more taxes. You get to pay more for the security services that you're paying for because the police can't keep up with the chaos created on the streets by this government and their reckless decriminalization. You get to pay more for all these things, but they won't invest in the upstream things that will actually help. They won't invest substantially upstream in mandatory care to get people off the streets. Maybe there's a couple of bucks in the budget to finally get us some Crown prosecutors so we can actually start charging people when they commit crimes and actually start putting people in jail, because we've seen a 42% decrease in our charge rate in Kelowna. Maybe, just maybe, we'll get some minor marginal improvements, but this is a terrible and embarrassing budget. And watching the MLAs across the aisle, the NDP MLAs staring at their desks as this budget was rolled out, and as Peter Millibar, who's our finance critic, dismantled it yesterday, you could tell this is not a budget these people are proud of, and they shouldn't be proud of it. They should be embarrassed by it, and they should understand that their government is coming to an end sooner than later.
Last question. We don't want to keep you too long because we do have the really big show to finish. We saw Harman Bangu. Ian said that Harman Bangu just announced that he's going to run for the Conservative leadership. When are we going to see that final list of candidates for the BC Conservative leadership? That gets elected, chosen on May 30th, right?
Yeah, so Jim, great question. I don't have the exact answer for that, but February 15th was the deadline for people who want to run to submit their paperwork, including, their green light packages, their gathered signatures, some initial funds. Usually what will happen is, maybe not everybody gets through that process. Maybe folks decide to pull out at that point. So I don't know exactly when we'll see a final list of greenlit candidates. My understanding is that they will be greenlighting candidates on a rolling basis, depending on when they submitted their complete packages. So I would expect that in the days ahead, we'll start to see people that we've been hearing about as prospective candidates who've been hitting the road as prospective candidates, being able to formalize the idea that they are now official greenlit candidates in the race. So I would expect that to play out on a rolling basis over the next couple of weeks. And then I would expect to see the field kind of continue to shake out as we get into debates, and you see people run into those money gates. It is you got to fundraise a lot to stay in this race, rightly so, because you need to fundraise a lot to win an election. But I think that will begin to winnow the field, and within say a month or so, I think it'll start to become really evident who the very serious contenders are.
Somebody said they love your sign. Sunset Cycles, one of our regulars here, said they love your sign there, Save Small Business. So I'm sure a lot
tell them to get in touch and I'll get them a copy of it.
There you go. All right. We do thank you, Gavin, for jumping in here, and appreciate that as well. And we're going to get right back to our show. But again, thank you, Gavin.
Thank you for having me, guys. Bye now.
So let's jump back into where we were there. Where were we? We're going to talk about food inflation. That's where we were. Thanks to Gavin Dew for jumping in. And we're going to get more guests. And somebody suggested Nate. We're going to try and get as many people as possible. So yeah, chuck in your suggestions, and you can help us reach out. We'd love to have somebody on almost every day. That's kind of the goal here. So food inflation. We talked about it yesterday. 7.3 in January. Look at this chart. Just let that sink in. Just let that kind of like seep into your brain. Just look at that. Just look at it. Look at the difference, and then listen to the rhetoric. And then there was an article in CTV. It was actually hilarious, and I read their reasons for the food inflation. They were all apologists for the Liberal Party. They could literally, we had Michael Cooper on yesterday, they could literally make changes. Get rid of the food packaging tax, get rid of the industrial carbon tax, get rid of the clean fuel regulations. They could do so much, so fast. We saw that with the carbon tax when for how many years did they lie to us and say and how many Nobel-winning laureates, economists came out and said that the carbon tax had no effect on inflation. And then when they took it off, those same economists came out and said, look what it did to inflation. It lowered inflation immediately. Ian and I have been saying it forever. Energy's in everything. Cheap, reliable energy equals prosperity. Yet they continue to deny it. And here's the chart. Look at this. This is the United States versus Canada's food inflation. Supply management, another big one. We can do things.
So I was talking about that in a committee. The whole thing. You can watch the whole thing. It's on
yeah,
Parvu, I think they got Parvu, the Parliament website, and he mentioned that supply management desperately needs to be reformed. But there are so many other things. He was very keen to emphasize that it is a Canadian problem, though. This is something particular to Canada.
Policy driven. And one of the things that Sylvain said is, because, you know, like, I know that it's going to be tough to get rid of supply management as a whole, but he said just like make it fair across Canada. You know what I mean? So it's not just centered on, we know who it is. Who's it centered on again?
So I can't remember. What's that province called again?
Starts with a Q. Anybody knows?
Yeah,
is it Quebec?
Is it Q? Is it? Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, that sounds about right. I would say, though, to refer to what you were talking about, inflation there, and how many times we were told that the carbon tax doesn't affect inflation, and also that it wasn't even a tax. So
it wasn't a tax. They said it wasn't a tax. It said it was a. Yeah. What was she trying to say that it was? It wasn't.
Levy, which is another word for tax.
A carbon levy and a rebate program. They tried to sell it as a rebate program.
But I just thought I would check out a George Orwell quote, or paraphrase one, to the best of my memory, which is, there is no idea so stupid that an intellectual won't believe it. And how true is that? As usual, George Orwell, absolutely on the money. There are some ideas that are just so spectacularly dumb that the only people who could possibly believe them are intellectuals. And that is an example of it, isn't it, really? We got to see one of Orwell's many rules proved true in real time.
I just don't know how in a room that Jeanette Charest, I hope I'm getting her name, Charest.
Charest is the old Quebec premier. Charest is this woman that we're talking about.
After what she did with the Freedom Convoy, which is the 4th anniversary today when they trampled on people's rights and freedoms, literally trampled on them. We're going to get to it. With horses, yeah, like the Romans. How she sits in a room and defends a $400,000 a year salary. Like, what does she do better than 98% of other Canadians who don't make $400,000? What does she offer Canada that 99% of Canadians don't have? How does she command that type of salary? How does Dr. Noma Meaner make $400,000 a year staring out a window looking for UFOs? How do they command that type of salary when Canadians are standing in food bank lines in record numbers? How do they, even like when they're looking for a raise and in bonus time, 90 to 95% of them get a bonus? Let's listen to Pierre Poilievre here.
Got some terrible news from Statistics Canada that food price inflation has now hit a spectacular 7.3%, by far the worst in the G7, twice what it is in the United States, and twice what it was when Mr. Carney took office. He promised that he would be judged by the prices at the grocery store, and here we are a year later, and those prices are rising at a world-leading rate. Canadians deserve affordable food that they can enjoy with their families, food that will nourish their bodies, not hunger and desperation. What we have now is a hunger crisis in this country. 2.2 million people lined up at food banks. We've seen food prices rise at near record rates, and that those prices are accelerating. And so I wrote the Prime Minister a letter today proposing emergency measures to reverse the inflationary policies that the Prime Minister and the Liberals have imposed. One, we're calling for the full elimination of the industrial carbon tax and the new fuel standard tax, which drives up the cost of fertilizer, farming, food processing. We're calling for the elimination of costly regulations that do nothing for the environment or public safety, but ban the use of plastics to preserve food. More and more food is going to waste because we're not allowed to use the best technology to preserve it, which is plastic in many cases. We also think the government needs a real plan to reverse inflationary deficits, which have doubled under Mr. Carney's watch. This money printing creates higher demand without supply and drives up the cost of everything. Finally, Mr. Carney suggested in the House of Commons that one of the causes for food price inflation is Canada's weak dollar. We're willing to work with him on policies that will strengthen our dollar, like unblocking our resources and selling them on the world market, which will create demand for the Canadian dollar, boost its buying power, and allow Canadians to buy more internationally priced goods, which includes food and fuel. We're prepared to work with anybody to achieve these things. Our vision is a country where anybody who works hard can afford a beautiful house.
Good. Good. There you go.
Well, with the food thing, the food situation, it really seems like something needs to happen anyway. Even if it's not Poilievre's platform or if it's not Sylvain Charlebois' ideas, whatever, it needs to be taken by the throat, doesn't it? This crisis. I think it is fair to call it a crisis. And it needs to be dealt with. And if that means completely rejigging the entire sort of transport network or whatever the hell it means, it clearly needs to be done, doesn't it? Because it's starting to become, it's like a metastasizing cancer, isn't it, this? And it's just getting worse and worse and worse. Every single year, this becomes more and more of a crisis. And I would wager that it's as much of a crisis as the lack of spending on the military, for example, and a lot of other sort of crises that Mark Carney is very attentive to. But I don't think he's, just purely from a political strategy perspective, let's say, I don't think he's positioned himself well on this. I don't think it looks like he's taken it very seriously. And that GST rebate is that's the kind of economic policy that Mark Carney, out of government, would call stupid and pointless. But now that he's in government, he's doing it. So, I mean, I don't really know how serious that is.
Bread and circuses. Mark Carney's reacted. They've asked for his reaction to Marco Rubio's speech. And again, it's on our Now Media YouTube. Go watch it. We put Marco Rubio's speech there and we put Mark Carney's speech there together so you can watch them one after another. And this is, and he responded in French. When he tries to evade things, he typically responds in French so he can hide in that language. But listen in to his response here. It is subtitled here.
Il y a un point important, je crois, entre le discours de Davos, un aspect de mes commentaires à Québec, le discours de M. Rubio il y a une semaine à Munich. On parle, M. Rubio, il a parlé, et l'administration américaine de temps en temps parle d'un nationalisme chrétien. OK? OK, ça c'est l'autre droit, c'est le droit de l'administration. C'est pas le nationalisme canadien. Le nationalisme canadien, c'est un nationalisme civique. Un nationalisme où on respecte des cultures diverses, des foi diverses, des gens sans foi, tous les aspects de la diversité, la grande diversité de ce beau pays. Ça, c'est un point très fondamental. Alors, on a des changements à travers le monde plus dangereux et divisé, mais il y a une lutte qui commence avec le nationalisme de sang et de foi de temps en temps, et le nationalisme canadien. Et c'est important, oui, c'est important de protéger notre pays dans une matière de défense, mais surtout, c'est plus important de protéger notre système, nos droits et notre système de respecter tous les gens ici, qui habitent ici.
That's good. That's good.
More important to protect our system, our rights, and our jobs. It's almost like our position at the top of this social hierarchy in Canada. But as usual with Mark Carney, I mean, I don't think we've got the time to go into it, but not historically accurate, and not for the first time. I think Mark Carney needs to brush up on his history, particularly the history of Canada. I don't know why he doesn't know anything about Canadian history. But get on that, Mark.
And as a Canadian, are you not tired of the fear that they continue to sell? Are you not immune to it by now? Like every day it's about the world is more divided than ever. No, it's not. No, it's not. You do that because, Justin Trudeau said it. We drive fear because it works. Just stop listening to CBC. Stop listening to all that stuff. Just stop. If they're just feeding you fear porn, just stop listening.
Indeed. But also, I refer you back as well to his speech in Tumbler Ridge, where he started to talk about grace, how grace operates within us all and things like that. I don't know if there's anybody here been to a Catholic church lately, but that is a kind of sermon that you would hear from a Catholic priest. And that was him in Tumbler Ridge as Prime Minister, very much as the leader of this country. And now he's having a go at Christian nationalism. Just, that might seem a bit petty, but it's kind of like, be consistent.
Yeah.
Don't try and sneak in
for the audience,
Christian concepts like that. I have a feeling it's because he thinks like people are too stupid to get this. They're going to think that grace is just like a generic thing. That's just a generic word that I can use. But in the context, it was very much Catholicism that we were being lectured. We were being taught Catholicism.
I think what he believes in is that the media will cover for him no matter what he says.
Well, media's too stupid. Forgive me, ladies and gentlemen. The media doesn't know the first thing about that kind of thing anyway. They don't know anything about Catholicism or Jesus or any of those guys.
Federal bureaucracy costs, and we showed you this yesterday, skyrockets 80% in 10 years. That's what I mean. They bought their voters, and the same thing in British Columbia. They don't want to cut anything because that's voters, right? They hint at it, they put it out there, and then of course the lines light up, the unions light up the lines, and then they just back right off, right? Back right off. And we're going to play this clip. This is a 4-year anniversary of when they brought the horses out like the Romans did.
Oh, come on through. Come on through. What is happening here? Wow. What is this lady doing? Trampling. Trampling horses. Trampling. Stop it. Stop it. Look. Oh my God. They just trampled this lady. They just trampled that lady. They just fully trampled that lady. They just fully trampled.
That's good. That's good. Because it gets a lot worse when they were bashing people in the face and all kinds of stuff. And again, these protesters wanted to speak to his lordship, Justin Trudeau, who wouldn't come out to speak with them. And they were guilty of parking violations, noise violations. And then Charest wrote that memo and accused them of every ist that she could come up with. Every ist. Misogyny, racism, Nazism, I don't even know. She just went through I think you said yesterday, the liberal arts degree HR department, and you just go through everything and you just kind of paint them. And Chrystia Freeland wanted them labeled as terrorists. Where does this compare to terrorism? Where in the world does this compare to terrorists? And yet...
Horses are quite terrifying, I would say. That inflicts a lot of terror into...
And yet 4 years, this is 4 years now, 4 years, and nobody's answered to it. The sausage media in Canada hasn't held one of them to account. Not one of them, including the person Mark Carney just elevated to be the head negotiator for CUSMA. Just slapping you in the face, literally slapping you in the face. Nobody's answered to this. Mark Carney was the economic advisor in this and told them to freeze the bank accounts. They did everything that they could to stop a peaceful protest. Yet these same people, the CBC, you can go to their website almost on any given day now, and they're going to have this anti-ICE, anti-Trump TDS stuff up there and how they've trampled on the rights of Americans, not even Americans, illegal aliens, yet complete silence on this, complete silence. John Carpenter is supposed to be on tomorrow, but he said that he has a cold, but he's going to try and make it tomorrow. So, yeah, go ahead.
I've got a cold as well, so get on here. But yeah, it's something that I find quite interesting about this. Canada and Canadians, but particularly Canada, the state, has a reputation for being like a pushover and being a bit soft and sort of weak and feeble and doesn't have the resolution, isn't tough, basically, can't do difficult things because it's too sort of, you know, too compassionate or something like that, or too soft. Quite interesting to see that, just how false that really is. When you look at that, look at the sort of the iron resolve in those cavalrymen and the, you know, the stormtrooper. I don't call them stormtroopers, but you know, the pikemen with their phalanx there. Just look at the sort of ruthlessness and the toughness. So all along, it's been revealed to us all along, the Canadian state isn't sort of congenitally soft and weak. It just needs somebody to hit, and then it can be as tough as any government in the world. It can be, you know, then you can literally get the cavalry out then, and it's fine. You can trample old women in the capital city. Like, you just need somebody to despise. You just need to have a scapegoat, really, and somebody needs to be defamed to such an extent that becomes morally acceptable for the enforcers of state power, which I think is quite interesting, because Canada, well, it must have the reputation in the world as like the softest country in the world, you know, but it's not. It's that classic old bit of sort of human nature. You give somebody to hate, give somebody someone to hate or something to hate, and you can turn them into ferocious cavalrymen, just like that.
Somebody wrote in the comments that I need to run for office. I mean, I get that from many people. Maybe one day, but maybe the best thing you can do right now to help us is give us a bigger voice, and that's liking, sharing, subscribing. I know I say it all the time, but make us so big they can't ignore us. And then one day, maybe I'm destined to take a run at this, because I remember as a younger man, I watched my daughter being coached there, and I was watching the coaches on the ice, and I'm watching the kids, and I think she was like 10 at the time, and I thought, oh my God, what are they doing? And I said, I can do a better job. So that started my trek into coaching, and I coached ringette, hockey, fastball, and I think for 10 years I coached all those sports, and we won provincial titles, went to Westerns a few times, took a team to Europe, and it was great. And it is just by having a mission and understanding who you serve. And I think that's what's missing in Canada, is a lot of people forget who they serve. You get elected by the people of Canada. We didn't get elected. They didn't get elected by a globalist regime or something, or by some climate agenda and all that stuff. Like, they should be reporting to the people. The people are what matter. The elected officials are the servant of the people. And people in government shouldn't be making 4 and 5 times what the regular Canadian makes. They are, again, servants of the people. It's not the other way around. They're like elites now. It's the Laurentian elite, and they take this from you, and it's like, and then they dole out some bread and circuses for you while you stand in lineups at food banks, and your youth now are fleeing to other countries because they don't think there's a future here for them. It's crazy. Which brings us to pay and benefits averaged $143,000 per federal employee last year, and that's from the budget office. This is true stuff. And total compensation per full-time equivalent is 5.1% up from $136,345. They got a 4.8% raise. The report counted, get this, 447,859 employees. That's how many people working now for the federal government. A 31% increase from 2015. What happened in 2015? We just can't seem to figure that out. In 2015, something happened. In 2015.
It's such an amazing moment in history, apparently, isn't it? It's like Charles Darwin studying this. This would be where he started his great work on Canadian politics.
They realized that if you just feed a certain group of people, including the media, the CBC is the shield. That's how they're not held accountable. It's the shield that doesn't allow us to get at them to even ask questions. 31% increase.
We're talking about the convoy there. It's not just a shield, it's a spear. It can also stab if necessary. It can also attack.
2024 to 25, total personnel spending $76.3 billion, up from $71.9 billion. And what has Mark Carney and the Liberals done since he's taken office in a year? He's opened up 3 more offices and paid out a salary. What was the salary of the Defense Investment Agency, the DIA? They have those. They like to copy the Americans. The DIA, I think it was $670,000, and might get it. And it ended with 100 though. And he said he never negotiated. That's how much money he deserves. Another former banker. Doesn't know nothing about military, but he knows how to count cash. This should be making people.
We should say that number again. $76.3 billion personnel spending, 2024, 2025.
How do you feel standing there in the food bank lineup? Yeah. We have a hard stop at 11, so we're going to have to burn through some of this stuff. But this is crazy. We might touch on this tomorrow. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. And meanwhile, the military, they're still paying them. I think they were at $40,000 for a starting salary. They got a 20% raise, and they were asking them to kill strangers. And these people aren't working 3 days a week, and they're supposed to go 4 days a week, and they were literally crying on CBC, saying how terrible that was.
Yeah. And
we're not going to play this clip from Franco from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. We have to get Franco on, actually. But look at this. This is from our auditor. Our Governor General. She's getting a raise too. She gets just under $400,000 a year. $130,000 in clothing. I've seen her clothing at events. How does she spend $130,000 in clothing? $150,000 a year in pension and $200,000 a year for expenses. That's after she leaves. If she quits tomorrow, she gets $200,000, and she wants that skating rink. What was that skating rink? Just under $10 million. She wants a private skating rink, which she'll bring little children in every now and then at Rideau Hall, and then a garage that they built there for just under $10 million because it was going to be an example of a green scheme garage.
But can you imagine Canada without the Governor General? Because I can't. It's literally inconceivable. What would we do?
Look, the power she has. Look what she's done for food inflation. She's brought it. No, she hasn't done anything there. So what has she done? She did show up at Tumbler Ridge.
Yeah, but did you listen to her speech?
Can't say that I did.
I don't think many people did, to be honest. Not easy listening. She, her job is basically media appearances and speeches and things like that, isn't it?
Figurehead.
Yeah. And she's supposed to look dignified, sound dignified, say good things, be a bit of a cheerleader or whatever it is, consoler in, for example, the Tumbler Ridge thing. You'd think that would be all her. And yet, no, that isn't her, is it? She doesn't, I really hate to say it, but she doesn't do anything, does she? It's, for many reasons, I hate to say that.
Do you know what? If we could get just a sliver of that $1.6 billion, the first thing I'd buy is a better chair because I'm always squirming. This chair is so uncomfortable.
Well, if you could have a clothing allowance there, $130,000, I'm sure that would.
$130,000. We could get some new. We could get snappier ties. We can get snappy. We must thank Global Traveler because he got us the new mics, which has been great. Ian's getting a new light as well. We got a new light coming. I don't know. Part of it showed up, I think, yesterday, but
yeah.
Refugee claims by travelers passing through Canadian airports fell by 73%, and that's after the cabinet reintroduced a Mexican visa requirement, records show. Inland claims also declined as cabinet cut foreign study permits at colleges and universities. Remember the crying at the colleges of that one Conestoga college there that had 86% of its enrollment was foreign students, and he was raking in over 600 grand as a president for a small, what do you want to call it, irrelevant college, Conestoga.
Certainly not a world leader in research, put it that way.
And we're going to just kind of jump ahead on some of these things. We can maybe dig into those more at another date. Feds pulled 4,100 pot licenses. Remember the big pot craze? That's what Justin Trudeau, he can claim that. He gave us pot. He gave us legalized pot. That was one of the few things he did. And I agree with Elton John. It should never have happened. And it's led to psychosis for many young youth. There's an epidemic going on for 15 to 30-year-old young males with too much pot use. Federal regulators suspended thousands of marijuana distributors' licenses for reasons of public health and safety. And a lot of that had to do with selling black market weed because, like the weed they get to sell, the margins are slim because they were promised when they bought all these licenses that they were going to make scads of money. Little did they know there was going to be one opened up every 15, like a few blocks away, there'd be another one, another one, another one, another one. And it was all regulated, so they resorted to selling black market weed.
Who could have predicted that?
Nobody. Nobody. The Economist here, this is one here. China's flagging domestic auto market will mean surge in exports overseas. Automakers need to be very careful when it comes to China, according to a report in Economist magazine, as the country's flagging domestic market will lead to even greater exports to more profitable markets abroad. These exports have surged in recent years. And China needs a market for its cars. China's EV market, I mean, that's a propped up market. They have, there's a good piece on the internet, you can go watch it. They were manufacturing cars with no sales. They were storing them in fields. They were literally storing them in fields and then selling them at fire sale prices. Basically, the dealers are forced to buy them because they can do anything they want in China to drive up sales. And they buy them, but there was no sale at the end of the day. There was nobody, the car wasn't actually sold to anybody. And so that's why they're trying to push. What's that?
They're also making them new and then fiddling with the paperwork a little bit so that it is theoretically a second-hand car, and then they sell it. 0 mile second-hand cars. I think it's in that Economist article. But the Chinese have been doing this for forever, really. Since Deng Xiaoping, they've been doing this ridiculous overproduction, and luckily for them, they've been able to dump it on the West and other parts of the world.
And Canada's now positioned. Canada's now positioned, according to Joe Lee, to destroy our own auto sector that's been around here, giving 500,000 jobs, to welcome the Chinese auto market into Canada.
It does raise questions, doesn't it?
What a disaster.
I mean, the last sentence in this story, I've included it there, which is, it will heap more pressure on incumbent car makers elsewhere, a number of which have recently been hit by vast write-downs on EV investments that were intended to help them keep pace with Chinese rivals. But the answer is, as we've said, you can't beat China. You're never going to do it. You can't keep pace with them. You can't beat them. They've just had to pass a law in China, or issue a rule in China, saying that it's very, very bad and naughty to sell a car for less than it costs to build it, because obviously that kind of thing happens in China, because it's a crazy, in economic terms, it's like upside down world. It's a crazy system. And if you attach yourself to that, if you build a bridge between your economy and their economy, you get infected with this madness. And that bridge is exactly what Mark Carney has erected with great pride.
And Matt Jean looked at that and says, I want to be part of that. I want to be part of that. I want to destroy 500,000 good-paying jobs in Ontario to destroy our auto sector.
Ford apparently as well, also given his stamp of approval.
I just don't know what he's got doling out there. But here's MP Jamil Javani there. We're not going to play the clip because we're running out of time. Is facing backlash over comments. And his basic comments where he's just telling people to stop with the anti-American sentiments. Mark Carney needs those because it drives fear into people. He needs the public to be scared of the Americans, Jamil is trying to pour cold water on it. So obviously, what's the CBC do? Well, they got to make sure that Jamil looks like a bad guy. What did you say yesterday? They called him a traitor, treasonous, all kinds of stuff, right?
They didn't say traitor, but they were implying they got close to that.
Hey, you can get pretty close with the brush, right? You can just kind of like paint it on. Yeah. You don't have to make a jump for it. Right?
You know what's happening. Yeah.
And
but also, I think you're bang on there. I think you're definitely right there. The anti-Americanism, or the fear about America, fear about Trump, that is the Liberal Party's meal ticket, and they know it. Of course they know it. They're not stupid. CBC is the media, the media wing of the Liberal Party in many ways. It's a bit more complicated than that, obviously, but let me just be arch and say that it's basically true. They also recognize that. So, of course, they have sent the shock troops to that part of the front, haven't they? If that is threatened, then their whole raison d'etre is threatened. If you don't have the panic about America and the hostility to Trump and all the rest of it, then theoretically you could be back to the pre-Carney days, before any of this exploded, when they were 20 points down in the polls against the same person, Pierre Poilievre, the same party. So they have to defend that. They've got to defend that like their lives depend on it, because in a sense they do. Their political lives depend on protecting that part of the battlefield. So they've jumped on this. Some people, neutral observers maybe, might be looking at this and saying, like, why are they so bothered about this? Why have they gone so mad on this? That's the reason, because they're defending what props them up. They're defending the source of their power.
Yeah. And the media in Canada doesn't hold them accountable. And you can see today, the 4th anniversary of when the horses were actually trampling on Canadians. Canadians that could have been your mother, brother, father, sister, relative that had a beef. Nobody's answered to it. And the media, completely silent. Well, they run how many stories on ice? How many stories on ice? We have Doug Ford here that talks about how the world centers around Doug Ford, and Jamil even, owes his whole political well-being to Doug. Let's play that clip.
Well, something, I really don't care what he says about me, because I gave him the chance. No one would even know who Jamil Giovanni was unless I hired the guy in my office. I didn't know him from a hole in the ground. But in saying that, I am happy that he went down in the U.S. I'm happy when I see other premiers go down to the U.S. and lobby. But no, I don't call it hissy fit. What I call is making sure we communicate with the American people, like I just did half an hour ago with the former governor.
That's good. That's good.
I don't know, from a hole in the ground. Do you think he practices that voice? Do you think he does it in the mirror, like the folksy voice?
It just seems like it's Doug's world, right? Bob and Doug's world. There used to be on SNL or something like that. We got to move on, though. We'll just leave that there for Doug to stew in his own thing. Matthew Law there in the Financial Post that we should let some universities fail. And a lot of these have been propped up just with guaranteed money for any institution, government, you know what I mean? Like the schemes that they ran to, the temporary, the foreign students, all these things that have kind of propped up these universities. So many of these presidents and heads of universities and colleges can make $600,000. Like Conestoga College should be in a prime example. 600 grand, 86, I think, percent of his student body was foreigners. Just unbelievable.
They just thought that it was like, they literally referred to it as an industry many times. And that is that's like they're too daft to even know what they're saying. But I feel like that if they were smart, that's almost like a slip of the tongue, isn't it? Because they do look at it as if it's like an industry. It's like a wealth generation. And they think of it as like it's a golden ticket, and there are no downsides except for everything that happens to everyone else, like housing prices and congestion and all the rest.
And I never verified this one, but somebody sent it to me, so I'm just says that there's scholarships out there for foreign students as well. $10,000 for undergraduates, $12,000. Just like, okay.
It really is, that is a laugh or cry one, isn't it? That I'm laughing. I choose laughter.
And this one here, referendum. If a referendum was held in Quebec, of course they're going to run these stories that most would stay. I mean, if you're Quebec, how would you get cash money if you didn't stay? Like we're. But again, like you said, these things change when reality shows up, right?
Yeah. But I want to see this. But I want to see the rest of Canada polled. I want to see what they think. Should Quebec stay or should Quebec leave? That's what I'm more interested in now. There doesn't seem to be that much of a separatist movement in Quebec, really, other than this weird situation where they want to vote for a separatist party. But I think they want to do that and then stop. It's like, we'll vote for them. They'll get us loads of concessions, but then we won't leave Canada, obviously. We'll just get concessions. We'll vote for the hard ass, and they'll go and sort things out for us. The Scots have done this in Britain, because Britain's like a sort of quasi-federal system. The Scots have voted for the Scottish nationalists on a number of occasions, but they don't actually want to leave. They just want to get really good deals. And it's not, I mean, you see this everywhere. It's not just Scotland and Canada. But I would like to know what, for example, Albertans think. Do they want Quebec in or do they want Quebec out? I'm very interested in that.
Well, you can tell us right here. We can start putting polls into here. Do you want Quebec to stay or do you want Quebec to leave? Just kind of chuck it in there. Susan Holt, we talked about her just a few days ago because she's encouraging all her federal or all her government employees and organizations there in the province there to get off of on New Brunswick there to get off X. No wonder. Her Auditor General report says the Premier's mismanagement, micromanagement is hurting New Brunswickers, and they're drowning in a sea of debt too. No matter she wants the next slide there. No wonder why she wants to get off of X so that she doesn't have to face it. Just like Matt Jean-Roux there shuts it down. Nobody communicates. Look, we allow you to communicate. We allow people to say negative things. Hopefully they're all good things. But, you know, CBC doesn't allow you to comment, do they? What does it say if they just want one-way communication? They just want to talk at you. Is that who you want to elect? Just people that talk at you, where you don't get any say whatsoever? You can show up for the vote, and the vote doesn't even matter because we can go into a back room, make a deal. There you go.
That's what you associate more with organizations like the papacy, isn't it? Like the papacy will, they'll hand you a note. They'll tell you what they think, but I mean, that's not even completely accurate because you can, to an extent, petition the Pope and things like that. But it is more of a kind of like, I'm in this job for life. I'm, chosen by God. You can listen to what I say. That's how this works. It's one-way communication.
I think God listens more than the Liberals.
Certainly.
Elon Musk, the first cybercab is rolled off the assembly line. I wish we were working on a future here in Canada that had a vision. If I was running the show, I would sell a vision of the future instead of this fear. I wouldn't even want to lead in an atmosphere of fear. I wouldn't even want to lead in an atmosphere of fear. It's absolutely atrocious that you would want it. I mean, it has low morals to want to lead in an atmosphere of fear. But it's worked in history, I guess. You know, anything that works.
Yeah, lots of examples of that.
We have a few other things here. We're going to skip through a couple of these things here. Alberta, province to say, we got a few minutes left. The province, nope, there you go. Killing it in tourism. Alberta punching way above its weight. Again, I mean, they do have Banff and Jasper, and they do have the Stampede, but punching way over its weight, and other provinces are looking, and BC should be killing it in tourism over Alberta. Yet, Alberta knows how to swing.
I mean, they do have, what was that, Moraine Lake there? They do have those lakes, which are... But then again, BC has a few of them as well, don't they?
BC is... Well, BC has the coastline we want to protect. We don't even want a pipeline to it, right? But nobody gets to go to. We have lakes in BC that you're not allowed to go to.
Yeah, exactly. Including, what's that one called again? Named after the Italian... I can't remember his name. Garibaldi, isn't it? Garibaldi Lakes?
We're going to have to...
One of the most beautiful beautiful natural spaces on the planet, and yeah, they seal it off for parts of the year for First Nations, don't they? You're not going there.
And the NDP, Don Davies, came out and said that we must protect Cuba. We're going to send the Canadian military there, I guess, the underfunded. We're going to have to hitch a ride. Should we ask the Americans if we can get a ride there so that we can fight against the Americans? What's going on? But Cuba, like most communist countries, has a two-tier system really going on. So the elites will be sucking on the stogies, while the rest of the population will be scratching in the dirt for garbage.
That sounds good.
What's that?
That sounds good. I'm looking forward to that.
So this is what Canada wants to protect. They also want, Nicolas Maduro to be released and let go back there so he can oppress more people.
U.S. imperialists.
This is an opportunity for Cuba, and like one of the biggest opportunities for Cuba. Marco Rubio, of Cuban heritage, one of the more powerful people in that cabinet, and could be one of the next presidents of the United States. This is an opportunity for Cuba to get some love and attention for the people of Cuba. Don Davies doesn't see that. He sees it as an anti-TDS moment. But here's what Rubio had to say. It's important for the people of Cuba to have more freedom, not just political freedom, but economic freedom. And he said that in Munich there. The Cuban regime has no fundamental understanding what business and industry looks like, and the people are suffering as a result of it. So I think certainly their willingness to begin to make openings in this regard is one potential way forward. This is an opportunity they should seize. Marco Rubio obviously has a love for Cuba. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. Instead of this two-tier system, which is what's being developed here in Canada, the elites. We show you the pay salaries of what some of these elites are making in Canada and what record food bank lineups look like for the rest of Canadians. I mean, and this is what they want to protect.
Sad, isn't it, when you look at it. Cuba's not really had a very good ride in general. It's another one of those countries that's just been shafted for so long in so many different ways.
We're going to have to get, I'm talking to loyalists, we're going to have to get Emily Lowen in. Is it her name, Lowen, the BC Green Party? Because she'd be like I imagine she hasn't, I don't remember reading it. She might be a staunch defender of Cuba as well. Seems to be an NDP kind of Green Party thing. But
I don't know if she has a Cuba position. I'm sure though, usually you can predict, can't you, when somebody is either, that's true of left and right. You can usually, you put in a few ingredients and you can guess what the cake is going to be.
Like very few minutes left here. I'm going to go fast on this. I'm going to miss that one, but sounds like we're going to hit the bigger one. Sounds like things are really heating up in Iran, and that even the poly market's saying that there's an that there's going to be military action in Iran here sooner than later. And J.D. Vance came out and said that that they crossed some red lines. So, but again, you can go take a look at that in poly markets. I'm just trying to get through some things. This one here is kind of hilarious. The Netherlands State Secretary of Finance, Natalie, wanted to do Natalie wanted to tax unrealized gains, and even God Saad put something out and said she wanted to put a 36% tax on unrealized gains. Turns out she had unrealized credentials. She faked her credentials and she's resigning. You can't even make this stuff up.
Wow, that's so funny.
You can't even make it up. And then we showed you.
Passed it though, didn't they? The lower house in the Netherlands, I believe, passed it on this unrealized gains thing. So it's got a lot more momentum beyond just this woman.
Katie Gallagher, we had her yesterday. Maybe we won't play it, but anyway, she's in it with another person there. And Katie just not looking very bright again. But poor Katie. How do you get the finance minister's job if you have no idea what's going on? I guess that's my question. We're going to end it there, though, because
one of our biggest fans could answer that question. If she still watches. I don't know if she still watches, though.
Oh, Christia? Christia, like, where are you? Come on the show, Christia. We'd love to have you on. You could be a regular guest because you're a journalist. You're a top.
Funnier than Bill Maher.
You're
He used to be funny. He's not very funny nowadays.
top economic advisor. Maybe you could school us in how this is actually working. Maybe I just can't see it. Maybe I don't understand. I don't understand the math.
Speak as slowly as possible.
Well, it's worked out. The math has worked out for her, though. She's gone from finance minister, transportation minister, to overseeing tens of billions of dollars of Canadian taxpayer dollars with no oversight. Talk about that for a good job. Do you know what I mean? Here's tens of billions of dollars. You go oversee this. Nobody's even going to ask you how you spent it. It'll be all good. It'll be all good.
There are some people that just live these charmed lives, aren't there? It's remarkable. For a long time, Justin Trudeau was one of those people, but I guess in the long run, he is kind of living a charmed life, isn't he? His massive Montreal mansion and wandering around the US with his pop star girlfriend. He's having a great time. Good for you, Justin.
That's, yeah, kudos. That's,
yeah, well done.
Why don't you come on the show with us, Justy? Just in case.
I would love that.
I would love that too. That's our show for today. John Carpe is supposed to be on tomorrow, depending on his cold. We're going to try and get a guest on every day. Send in some suggestions. You can go to thereallybigshow.ca. You can see some stuff. Please consider becoming a member of the Thinking Canadian. We're going to get our merchandise up pretty soon. But most of all, if you're a regular here, or so just hit the subscribe button. It's just over there. Just over there. I don't know. Just click it. Just click it. Do that for us. Thank you. Cheers.